I did. I tried. I tried the video myself sinew backing this bow, and each time the screen just went black. I'm not too sure that my phone's gonna work now. It says that like there's a memory issue, but it's funny how it didn't do that before I got this update, and I got rid of a lot of apps, got rid of everything. There shouldn't be, unless there's some mysterious bug in there that's trying to get me to trade my S8 Samsung in for an S9. I strongly suggest that is what they are up to. But so I made it to this point. On my jig, which by the way, I talked about earlier when I was filming this, but it's nice because I can adjust the distance of the blocks. They're cedar, so they're not going to dent anything. I have the ability to put these at the tips and then tie this down to build in some reflex, although I didn't do it this bow. Simply just set it on there. I would wrap no matter what I do, whether or not I use the wet methods of sinew backing, or the drier method, which is also wet. It's just less wet. The two wet methods which I have used in the past, one, you have a glob of hide glue in your mouth, and you chew on the sinew, and it imbues the sinew with some glue, and you just stick it on the bow. Wet method number two is you take your prepared sinew, you pounded it, and you separated it into the three basic components, tossed the short one off to the side because you don't use that one except for simmering down in the glue. The two Ys, process them down to usable sinew, and you get this big beautiful clump of it, and you just put that in a Ziploc bag, for example, and put it with a thinned glue mixture, thin enough if you wish that it does not gel at room temperature, and then just pull it out, stick it on the back of your sized bow. And sizing is just adding glue to the back until it's sticky to a wet finger. The purpose in wrapping that bow that used a wetter method of sinew backing is that it squeezes out the excess moisture. Moisture will actually leave the bow when you squish it down with gauze or cherry bark or whatever you want to wrap it with. I, however, used the standard method. I've got my big bundle of beautiful, fluffy, prepared sinew, and I break it down into small bundles of fibers that I'm going to lay in the back. Dip it in my glue that is in the glue pot, that is in the pot of water that is on the hot plate, over the fire if you want to be totally primitive about it. Soak them in there, and I always have a spoon or something that's in the glue pot so I can just lay the fibers over, just let them sit there, because sometimes if you have a particularly stiff fiber, a group of fibers within that processed fiber grouping, you have to let them soak until they are flexible, absorb the glue. And so I just lay them on the spoon, and it might take me a minute or two to let each one of those little bundles I stick on the back soak, and so it takes a while. I stay to a pattern when I'm doing this. There's a definite pattern. When you look at this, it's a Gullwing bow. I want to keep that reflex in it. So the first thing is to lay down a patch of sinew just beyond the fades where the handle turns into the limbs. Boom. And that extra bit of lamination will help keep that handle in reflex. This is a non-bending handle. And then I go, once I get that flat thing down, which I showed in the video and the camera died, then I go to my pattern. I am looking down upon the bow. And as I look down upon the bow, I visualize 5 rows. I usually do 5 rows. A center one on either side, and then the edging, which goes over the edge a little bit and then hits that wood that I missed. And so, I always start out with, pick a bundle, soak it, and then lay it down center of handle, just center of everything. Center widthwise, center lengthwise here, and then overlap it and run the center bead down and maybe go over the end. It's not really necessary because I've got 4 other runs that can go over the end. The second ones on either side, I don't start them next to each other because I don't want to have a full width and then an overlap, full width all the way. I want to have more of a brickwork pattern. I'll start the ones that are on either side, not center, but off a little bit, and it's symmetrical, same that way, and run to the end. If I wish, I can curl those over. I usually will. They'll curl over a little bit. Those aren't my finishing that go over the end. I save that for layers 4 and 5. Now, I've got one down the center, one on either side. Now, number 4 and number 5 that go over the edge a little bit and cover the remaining of the wood, I start in the ends. I cut number 4 and 5. Lay them down and then go over. So number 4 and 5, because it gets really thin here, I can take that and I can spread it the full width of this tip. They go over, and then I work towards the handle. And if I get a little extra in here, if there's more overlap, that's fine. In the handle, whatever. Sit back, admire my work. Oh yes. And I have extra sinew left over because you always have more than you need. The bulk of the remainder will be for wrapping the tips in the center of the handle. I'm not going to do mid-limbs on this. It's not a heavy enough bow. It's not stressed that much where I need mid-limb wraps. If it was going to be an 80-pound Osage bow, yes, I would have mid-limb wraps. But on this, not necessary. Plus this elm, the glue absorbs so much that it's not going to delaminate. It soaks, the glue soaks in easier into elm than it would the Osage or mulberry. And so, let's see here. I started this. Okay, now one layer here just in the center of the handle, a layer that goes side to side and nice even overlapping, nice edge. You have to have a nice edge. Now I'm going to lay a center layer down here. I don't need to go over the tips because it narrows, it bunches up more, so it's heavier. It's a heavier, thicker layer on the tips and the skinny area than it is in here. I will start that next layer that just runs down the center, probably half the width total, but just right down the center so I can crown it. I start like right in here, or right in here if you can't see that end. You know, where you start getting this concave nature of it. No matter how careful you are, it's going to be kind of concave in the center. Maybe it dried a little bit, but I start about here, maybe 4 or 5 inches from the tips, and lay it down, right down the center. In that one, I have my individual little bundles. I'll have twice as much. That bundle that runs down the center, those bundles will be twice as thick. And so I can maneuver it, I can sculpt a little bit, I can make a nice curved surface up here, put it down there. Now, even though I don't need to wring wetness out of this because it wasn't extremely wet, it actually gels really fast, I still wrap it just to compact it, just to push it down, just to squish it so it forms a nice smooth surface. No sanding. I'm not going to sand the back of this at all, unless I want to add some, like a Sinew or a hide glue wash or whatever, but that's not necessary. I compact it with this gauze. I'll start right here and then work my way this way, pushing it down somewhat. There's a tension on this when I ramp it, but it's not as tense as when I have coated it with the first layer of gauze at a moderate, pressure. Then I can really reef on it, really lay the pressure down, because that first layer of gauze will keep the sinew from sliding around. If I have an uneven pressure, it'll move it. But that gauze will keep it intact, and I can really reef down on it and then do the other side. This is one roll of gauze. I can do from here to here and then back with one roll, and then I just tuck it under. You can see these things, it's just tucked under to finish it. And so that is that. You let it dry slowly at first. There's a curve. It loses most of the moisture probably over the first 24 hours, and then it slows down a little bit. It's just like wood. And so I'll let it dry slowly. I don't want it to dry fast on the surface and dry slow inside. I want it to dry uniformly, so that is why I will not dry it in the sun. It'll just sit in the shade overnight. Then I'll take the gauze off. There's not much that the gauze can do anymore for it. I don't know. You don't want to like put it out in the sun and the wind for a couple days, because you want it to dry slow at first, and then you can speed up the drying. And in a day and a half, it'll look like it's finished. It won't be, but it'll look like it's finished. So on this bow, one layer here, one full layer here, and then a narrower layer that's covering probably 50% of the surface area down the center. I could have done 2 full layers side by side and then a third down the middle, but I'm not going for heavyweight. I'm not going for power layer here, because if I was to do 2.5 layers in this, it would boost the draw weight considerably, which would stress the belly considerably. And this needs to be on the lighter side of Gullwings, just for the user's wishes, and that is that. I am finished, and hopefully I'll look at that and the screen won't be black like it has been every single time I tried to do a video today.